Welcome back to the next part. I have just cleaned up the end of the axle, as you can see, drilled and centerboard these plates just so I can get an idea of where the wheels will be. And I'm now thinking that actually I don't need to make the chassis wider. I think the chassis is the right kind of width to the point where I'm actually going to have to run the wheels back to front. So I will be welding up the hole for the valve and running them that way round, because bearing in mind that line on the floor is the outer body work, that then fits with that sort of width. And the same with the front. I've actually removed the caliper because I wanted to try and get the wheel as far inset as possible, and the normal way round again it doesn't work, but if I put the wheel on backwards it gets us to about the right body width. It's supposed to be slightly narrower at the front, and then it will clear the steering arm just, but I need to get a smaller caliper to fit inside the wheel. And there is a bit of a recess with this section, so I might be able to get a caliper that will fit closer to the actual rotor or brake disc, or I could just forget about the front brakes and just use the rear, because the rear is pretty heavy duty anyway. What else have I done? So this is the chassis at the ride height for the centre of the tyres. So if I come around here and pull that out of the way, that's about how much longer the chassis needs to be from the centre of the axle, existing axle, to where it needs to be there. And the body line is about that. Just holding up bits of wire to see whether everything fits in the space that I've got, basically. So the only downside at the moment is it's a lot more difficult to get rid of the negative camber, because obviously the hubs are welded at an angle as well. So I might just leave those the way they are. The only other problem is there's not a great deal of steering lock. So that is the most amount of lock it gets. Obviously with the Ackerman it gets more on the other side, but you can see that it's fairly restrictive for turning, so I need to do a modification to the centre link. I think if I put those ball joints on the same bolt, that will get me a bit more throw, maybe even move them out slightly. And yeah, I need to drop the steering column. It looks like it's at its highest point or highest mounting there, because it's almost touching that welded collar. So I need to drop the angle down to try and get it within bodywork, which is about that height, and get it a little bit further back. And to make the chassis longer, I'm going to cut it there, no, it's a bit tighter, that one down there, and there. I thought, yeah, if I cut them all in the same line, same place, it's probably going to get a fatigue stress. So I need to cut through those, make the chassis a bit longer, and then the bodywork is going to be probably light gauge stainless steel box, picking off from the original sort of side body mounts, and anywhere else where I can get a decent fixing, and then it'll be covered with alley sheet. Right, let's start cutting the chassis. This is the engine and box. Thankfully there's a flat surface underneath on each that I can use to make a stepped bracket, and then I will try and tie in some of these mountings to these so that the whole thing becomes much more secure. So I've got to make a 65mm drive shaft to go from the flange that was on there to the 3-pin rubber coupling that's in there. Okay, so I've extended the chassis, got rid of one of the rails because when I start building the body, the whole thing's going to become quite rigid anyway, because it will all be a monocoque basically rather than a separate chassis. And I'm just trying to line up, well, not really line up, just position the engine. It's quite high in this scenario, but it may be the only place where I can get it and still have access to it. And the back of the car will be sort of along this line, so not sure. It's difficult to sort of hang it over the back behind the axle because of where the chain drive comes out of the gearbox. So the gearbox really needs to be in front. I suppose I could put it upside down. The orientation is, yeah, I don't really think there's any reason for orientation other than oil level. But I suppose once I've set that, I know I've got the right amount in there. Yeah, I could put that in that position. And then the seat, I've just tried to drop the column down, but that's as far as it goes with that tank. So I'll probably have to take the tank out, put the tank at the back anyway, and may be able to drop it down a bit further on those rails, but it may not go down enough. Let's pull that tank out and have a look. So that is the tank out, and I managed to drop it down on these slides about 2 inches, which has changed the rake angle quite a bit. So I might be able to get away with that. I need a smaller steering wheel, but yeah, I think that will do. And that is probably it for another week until next Sunday.